Hello and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk. I'm your host, Damian Abraham. Once again, I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who grew up listening to punk, may or may not still be involved with punk, but had their lives changed by the genre in a major way. And today on the show, huge guest, an unbelievably, incredibly accomplished actor, and also the original roadie for the Cro-Mags. That's right, Brooke Smith is on the show today. You might know Brooke from Grey's Anatomy, you might know her from Weeds, you might know her from Silence of the Lambs. She has been in tons of things, but also probably saw, some of the most impressive New York hardcore shows ever. But we will talk about that in 1 second. First, if you would like to get in touch with me, head over to the email address, turnedoutapunkpodcast@gmail.com. That is where my brother and show producer and normally guest booker extraordinaire, but today, John Ross Bowie, alumni of the show, and we'll talk about his brand new amazing podcast in a second, but he hit me up, and this one, I got to give credit where it's due. I love you, Tristan, for all the hard work you do for the show. But today, John, thank you very much. And Tristan will get the message to me. John won't get the message to me. Tristan will. And we can communicate that way. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Left4Damian. If you want to support the show, the best way to support the show is just by telling all your friends about it, letting everyone know that we do this podcast here and you enjoy it, and, just spread the word that way. Or you can subscribe to it and rate it on iTunes. And thank you very much to the people that do that. I very much appreciate it. Or you can head over to patreon.com/turnedoutapunk and check out some of the stuff we do over there. Video versions of some of the episodes of the podcast, unreleased episodes, lost episodes, live episodes, all sorts of things are over there. Footnotes, of course, as well. So please check out Patreon. And speaking of support, this show would not be possible without the kind, loving support of the fine folks at Vans who came aboard a few years ago and said, Damian, do what you do, but just don't do it out of your own pocket and help me cover the cost of this thing. So thank you very much to Vans, and thank you to everyone at Patreon for helping this thing stay afloat. Also, the band I play in, Fucked Up, will be going on tour coming up in a few weeks. We're going to be playing with the band Faith No More. Get yourself vaxxed, wear a mask, and come out to those shows and hang out. It should be fun. We will also then hopefully, fingers crossed, be going on tour in January on the East Coast and then the West Coast, I believe. I don't think that's been announced yet, but we're going to be coming to the West Coast. And then going to Europe, or at least the UK and Ireland and Scotland, I believe, on that tour. Anyway, we've got some shows lined up. Check out fuckedup.cc for all the details. We also have Year of the Horse coming out on vinyl on Tank Crimes Records. You can pre-order that there. It's an hour-and-a-half long song, as well as, David Comes to Life being reissued by Matador. So check that stuff out where you order those records from, those labels, and get tickets to those shows. And I'll see you there. I'm very excited. Very excited to get to play shows again. I got a taste of it a couple weeks ago with that Dancer Jr. thing, and now I'm amped. I'm ready to get back in there. All right. On to today's show. Today on the show, as I mentioned off the top, an incredible guest. Brooke Smith is on the show today. And now, I was unaware of Brooke's. Obviously, I was a fan of Brooke on various things she's done over the years in TV and film, but I had no idea about the punk connection. Even though Double Cross did interview her years ago when she did this photography exhibit of some of her photos. We talk a little bit about this photo stuff in the episode. Believe me, it's incredible. But I was completely unaware about this. And then my buddy, our friend of the show, John Ross Bowie, hit me up and said, I just interviewed Brooke Smith and you got to have her on the show because it's incredible. It'll blow your mind, the stuff she saw and the stuff she was into. And so it did. This is a good one. This is one of those ones that, I had no idea what to expect going in. And my gosh, did Brooke do some cool stuff. She's got a book coming out. She mentions it a little bit. I'll let her talk about more of that in the episode. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble on. There's so much stuff for you to hear in the episode that I'm going to get to that in a second. But check out Household Faces, John Ross Bowie's new podcast. He's got Martha Plimpton on, and it's an incredible episode. He's interviewing character actors and just kind of getting to just having really in-depth conversations with fellow actors. And it's a fantastic podcast. I strongly recommend it. And that's it. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. Here is the great Brooke Smith on Turned Out a Punk. Brooke, thank you so much for coming on this show.
Oh, yeah, please. Thanks for having me.
Well, when John Ross Bowie told me that you were a New York hardcore kid, all of a sudden, like as I told you off air, I feel like I betrayed the listeners because this is the type of thing that I should know. I cannot believe I didn't know. And then, of course, finding out about you having this photography exhibit of all these incredible photographs a few years ago, and then also the fact that hopefully a book is still in the works, I believe.
It is. My God, I've got to finish it. It's really, I think it's my fault. So I don't know. I've written the foreword. I have a couple friends writing other things. All the photos are selected and placed. I'm hoping to get it done this year.
Well, not to heap onto that pressure pile, but I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this book to come out
Yeah.
because a lot of people, like are obviously, familiar with punk rock or definitely like maybe even familiar with hardcore, but you are in it and you are in one of the most fascinating parts of all of the hardcore universe, which is late mid 80s New York hardcore, which I'm obsessed with. But I got to start this off the way they all start off, which is Brooke, how did you get into punk? Do you remember the first time you ever came across the genre?
Oh, my God. Well, we used to listen to FMU radio.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like, and there was a lot of, Duran Duran and Echo and the Bunnymen and stuff like that coming over, which, I was into when I was a little younger. Um, I have to say, I don't really remember what the hell it was. I remember listening to the Sex Pistols. Like, I remember that being like, okay, this is different. Um, and then basically, I just felt myself drawn to the Lower East Side. I don't know what to say. I would take the bus in. I lived in the suburbs. I just kept walking further east. And then, once I went to my first matinee, that was it, pretty much. I was just total. And my first matinee, I think, was The Mob, Cause for Alarm,
Oh,
and somebody else. I don't know who else. I just know. Oh, maybe. No, maybe the Cro-Mags. It's possible.
what
I
a
don't
triple bill. Even
know,
with the
right?
two of them, it's an incredible show. So, um, but like one thing that kind of comes up time and time again about New York, especially during that time period, is that how dangerous the Lower East Side was. Like, it's the alphabet, right? A, you're A-OK. B, you better be
Yeah.
careful. C, like, like that. So as a young person, that must have been, was it scary to go down there or was it thrilling? Like,
So, yeah, I mean, it was kind of both. It was both. It felt very alive, let's
mm,
put it that way. And very a little bit Wild Westy, like a little bit like we were on our own. Yeah, it was pretty wild. But I kind of liked that, and I kind of like, if I'm honest, and I kind of like the whole feeling like it was our park, Tompkins Square, you know, and just sort of, I mean, I was obviously very naive suburban girl just wandering in there, but it's funny. I've been thinking a lot about how we all. Do you remember that ridiculous book, Clan of the Cave Bear?
no, what is this?
Okay, it was like, I think it was like a women's book. It was like basically it was all about how the people you meet in your life, you meet them for a reason kind of thing. And like you recognize each other from being from the same tribe. And, I used to go to therapy and all that. And they used to say like, why do you keep dating your father? And I was like, really? Is it that simple? I don't understand. But all of this just to say, now the people who are still alive from that time are all writing books. And it's just shocking to me what we all had in common,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I think it was Nicole Panther. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Sorry. No, me either. Sorry. I just meant like it's not like we knew it or talked about it necessarily, but I feel like we all found each other for a reason.
Yeah. Like I forget who said it even on the show, but there's someone that brought up the fact that New York, especially New York, like New York hardcore at that time, like it was really like the island of lost kids. Like it's like a bunch of kids that were like finding each other. And it's really like a young people that are building this whole scene. Like people that come on keep remarking about the fact that it was like young, a really
Yeah.
young punk scene.
Yeah, and when I look through the photographs now, it's shocking because
Yeah.
you know that thing of like when you get older and like the people who were older than you always still seem older, but then when
Yes.
you're their age, you're like, wait, that person in this photo is older than me now, but I still can't see that. There's something about looking back at these photos where I'm like, oh my God, Jimmy Gestapo is like 10. I mean, he's not 10, but he looks it. And no one has there's like one or two tattoos, and then they start getting more and more. So, yeah, we were very young. It's kind of shocking when I look at it. And I have an 18-year-old daughter. I was like almost out of the scene by that age, which is like, wow, okay.
That's fun. I've got three kids myself, and like my youngest is at, or my oldest is at the age now where he would just be starting to go to shows or get interested in going to shows,
Mhm.
like I was at his age, and it just seems like so unfathomable.
Isn't
Like,
it?
yeah, it's just like the idea. I was interviewing someone last night who was 11 when he started playing in punk bands, and I just
Mhm.
can't imagine that now. Like it just seems like a completely different world.
Who was that?
It was Jason from Verboten, New
Oh,
Darcy.
yeah.
He was in
Yeah.
Verboten. He plays with Bob Mold and he plays
Okay.
with Superchunk and things like that. But he played in Verboten when he was 10 years old, his
Yeah, I
first
mean
show.
that is hard to imagine, isn't it?
Very much. It's also Steve McDonald when he was on the show from Red Cross. He was kidnapped by the woman he was quote unquote dating, who was 22 when he was 12 years old.
Oh dear Jesus.
It's it, I think that like it's obviously can have a lot of positive things, but the reality is also like you've got a lot of young people mixing with older people, for better or for worse a lot of times too, like in
Yeah.
punk. Like it comes up, it's a lot of positive things can come out of that, but also certainly hasn't been unsaid that there's been terrible things that have come out of that too. So it's such a weird nexus point for everyone to be meeting.
Totally. And I have to say I do feel very lucky to have survived. Because now that I'm a mom, I always think of how my mom used to like plant this propaganda in my brain. She would always say to me, "I know you're pragmatic, so no matter what, you're going to make the right decision." She like repeated that to me. And meanwhile, I just don't think, I mean, there's no way she had any idea what I was actually into?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yikes.
Were they aware of it? Did they get freaked out because like it was getting media coverage, like the New York hardcore kid thing, right? Like it was on the cover of the New York magazine, New Yorker magazine, maybe even, and it
Yeah,
was
and then we
the
all went on
Regis,
the Donahue
the
show.
Donahue show, and then there's also the Regis Philbin had Warzone on too early on. Like it was a media kind of like talking point, how scary it was for kids, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was. And I remember my dad had a friend who, worked in the sex crimes unit of the NYPD, and he would always say things like, I've heard about that danceteria club, stuff like that. It just made it all cooler because what can I
Yeah.
say? I was rebel.
Had you been to any concerts before going to that first matinee?
Like concerts at all?
Like concerts period to even prepare you for like the live music experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did go to a lot of the Peppermint Lounge and Danceteria shows. I saw U2's first show at the Pier.
Awesome.
In America first show, and my very first concert was dun, 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 the Eagles, Heart, and the Little River Band.
Whoa, that's a pretty good bill. That's not quite mob cause for alarm Cro-Mags, but certainly on another level. you
Yeah, it
know?
didn't really prepare me in any way for the
No.
first matinee, but yeah, that was my first concert, and I saw the Clash a lot too. I was a big Clash fan.
So you were
So
already kind of like like obviously not a hardcore kid, but you're already a punk rocker by the time you're making this journey to the Lower East Side.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I wore garbage bags and shaved my head because my hair was falling out because I dyed it so many times, and my mom kept saying, "You keep dyeing your hair, it's gonna fall out." So she couldn't be right.
Well, it's only natural that that scene would also birth Manic Panic hair dye.
Yes, and it's still around. It's
Yeah.
so amazing.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
it's it's amazing when you kind of think about the people that were in these rooms where there's not tons of people, yet all these people wind up doing kind of like interesting and wide-reaching things throughout culture, including inventing hair dye.
Yeah, yeah. There
Uh,
you go.
what were some of your favorite bands early on?
Well, Bad Brains for sure.
Mm.
Like, oh, once I saw them, I mean, and to this day, I don't know that I've ever seen any live show like some of those early Bad Brains shows. Agnostic Front, definitely. Cro-Mags. Cause for Alarm, like I said, Cause for Alarm for sure. Had a huge crush on Cherokee. Um, and what else? What else? I mean, I know I'm forgetting bands
Scared
here.
Straight, probably. You see Scared Straight?
I did not see Scared Straight. I
Okay.
don't know Scared
Oh, not
Straight.
Scared Straight. Sorry. Oh my God, that's my blasphemy on my part. Straight Ahead.
Straight. Oh yeah, Tommy. I mean, because I lived with Alexa, who ended up having a child with Tommy, and Alexa was this hot punk rock chick, still is, and used to love to try to get the straight edge boys. That was like her goal. And let me tell you, she got them. So there.
It feels like it would have been, like ideologically, like you bring it up there, like the fact that you have straight edge people interacting with people that are, like Jimmy Gestapo, Murphy's Law, people that are decidedly not straight edge. Like it feels like it was kind of like an interesting nexus once again for like people with different ideas about what it means to be a young person.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel, I mean, at least in my experience, we all did sort of get along for the
Mm-hmm.
most part.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Did
yeah.
you were any of your photos pure in fanzines back then?
No, no, a couple of, like I took the picture of ultraviolence that they always used on the flyer, and yeah, there were a couple of flyers that ended up with my photos, but no. It's funny that I didn't. No one seemed to care about my pictures until whatever 15 years ago when I was moving and I found a box of them, literally, and showed them to a friend, and he was like, "Can I show these to somebody?" So yeah, I don't. I took pictures for bands. I worked on a cover for the Cro-Mags that didn't come out. Didn't exactly work, but
Well, what was
yeah.
on that cover? What was that cover supposed to be?
Oh my God, it's hilarious. I found it recently. It's like in the foreground is a cemetery, and in the background, with these tombstones, is the New York City skyscape. Skyscape.
That sounds so awesome.
Oh, you like it? All right. Well, there
I
you
gotta see it. Well, it's such an iconic cover to think like how these little things could have changed history. I would have loved to see that cover. Oh my gosh, that's
right?
incredible.
Maybe they would have all gotten along and been together today had that been a record cover. Yeah, no.
It could have. You could
Yeah.
have changed the course of music history forever if they had used that cover.
Whoops. Oh well.
But it does. You bring up a great point that at a lot of the stuff that you're doing just as part of course, like you're just taking these snapshots of your friends at the time, and it's amazing how years later these things carry such historical weight.
Yeah, and I keep reminding my oh God, the dogs are going crazy. I keep reminding myself that as a parent too, that some of these things I might judge, like them being on their goddamn phones all day long and all night long, that there might be something there that I don't understand, that might turn into something good for them.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely. I think that's probably the only thing I can really take away from my experience being involved in like this kind of music as a young person is that it means nothing to the vast majority of people, but to me it was everything. So when my child's flipping out about missing a Minecraft tournament, trying to put that in that perspective, like for me, this would be like missing out on some shitty band that only put out a demo tape that my parents did not care about in one slight bit. Like just trying to put in those terms, you're exactly right because who knows what this stuff's going to be looked back? Who knows how they're going to look back upon this chapter of their lives years later?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what the hell? I don't know anything. I know less and less as I get older, and I'm more and more comfortable with it. So,
Yeah. No, I think that's the reassuring part about getting older is just realizing that you're going to know less and less. Like they're culturally reassessing Limp Bizkit right now, and people are like being like, "Well, Limp Bizkit's not that bad," and I'm like, "Well, I know I'm getting old because there's no way I can be on board for this cultural reassessment."
yeah, I was like, please don't ask me how I feel about Limp Bizkit because
Oh,
I'm
I
not.
wouldn't.
Okay, good.
No, no. I think we're more back to the ultraviolence talk here on the show
Exactly.
because the
Yeah.
other thing that always surprises me is that the fact that you mentioned that there's not a lot of conflict and people are getting along, and I brought this up to a lot of people here, is the fact that you have such extreme political views all seemingly coexisting, and that doesn't happen in other scenes like it does in New York.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And I don't think I mean, everything's so polarized now,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess there are those who might feel like we weren't all so united, but in my experience, it just felt like we were fine. Like, fine, you're straight edge, that's okay. I guess maybe we draw the line at the Nazi skinhead thing,
Yeah,
but for
yeah.
the most part, and a lot of things that were done, I think, in that department were for shock value, obviously. So, you
But
know,
even ideologically, like the fact that you've got on like the way it is comp, you've got Nausea, and then you also have YDL. Like these two bands that couldn't have more different worldviews. Yet
Exactly.
everyone seems to be able to kind of get beyond that and be there for the music in New York. Like obviously, as you're saying, there are conflicts that do, especially later, really spring up. But it's always fascinated me that it was just like a bunch of, like you're saying, these kids that needed it so badly that they were able to kind of like put up with the shit just to be there.
Yeah. And, I was also thinking about, again, the social media technology thing of today and how I don't think that scene could have ever happened if that was how it was now because we didn't have phones. You couldn't call somebody. If I wanted to find John or Harley, I knew where to go. I had
Yeah.
to go to the park or go down to, whatever it was. You had to go in person. I mean, I did know the payphone number of St. Mark's and A payphone. Uh, and 9 times out of 10, if you would call that number, Frenchie would answer or somebody you would know would
Yes.
answer. Unless, of course, you were paging for drugs at that payphone at that moment. Yeah. So I just feel like we all just like had to show up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like and it is, it's interesting now where like the idea of being bored and sitting around and waiting for something to happen doesn't seem like something people would want. And I'm saying not just young people. I mean, even myself as an adult, like the idea of like, just, I'm just going to go sit around this club and hope that I run into someone that I know for the
Yeah.
whole afternoon. Like people just don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess there's good things about that, but
Hmm.
maybe something's missed. I don't know.
Well, it's like the idle hands can either provide the devil's plaything or like this incredibly fruitful creative outlet, depending
Yeah.
on whose hands they are at any given time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Did you ever try and do bands yourself? Play in a
Did
band?
I ever try to be in bands?
Yeah,
Yes, I did, and I sucked. And I had issues. What can I say that I clearly couldn't work through? There's just too many strings on the guitar. My fingers don't fit. Okay,
I
and
know.
I tried bass. I guess I would say I played bass, but not really. And none of the bands ever really went anywhere. So nothing to report about.
Did you play live ever?
I sang backup a couple times for a band called Modern Clicks in New York, so that
Modern
was
Clicks,
fun.
you stumped me. Did they put out a record?
Yeah, oh yeah, they did.
Oh
And
my God, I feel once again humiliated on not knowing this.
oh no, but it wasn't really hardcore. It was kind of a weird mix of yeah, I don't know, reggae, hardcore, but not Bad Brains, not like that.
Hmm.
So
That's the other thing you bring up there, like New York, everything's going on, especially at that time. Like you've got obviously this New York hardcore scene with straight edge stuff and all that stuff, kind of part of it. But then you also have like this New York kind of noise rock scene that I guess media would call the pig fuck scene for a while, but like Swans and Sonic Youth and Pussy Galore.
oh
And then
yeah.
you've got like it feels like just like a bunch of different like micro scenes also happening at the same time. Like it's a really just incredible period for music.
Yeah, it really was. And I'm hopeful for New York now for the first time in a while because the last sort of 15 years when I go back, I don't recognize it.
Mm.
It's like my ex-husband who only likes rich people now or something. You know what I mean? Like it's weird. But then of course this pandemic happened and I was there in February and ooh, that was weird. Really weird to be there. So I don't know, maybe it'll be reborn. I
Mm.
don't know. Not sure. But back when I was a kid, you could live in a squat. You could have no money and live in New York. But I don't know how much you can do that now.
Yeah, someone was telling me just recently. I was speaking to someone this weekend, and they were like, New York at that time period was full of people that wanted to be there. Like, and it was like you had to want to be there to make it work to
Yeah.
be there. But it was cheap enough that if you were there, you could afford, like you're saying, to make great art because like rent was super cheap, or there was a squat or something. Like it just,
Yeah, you could find a way.
yeah. And it's interesting to think of these scenes needing space, cheap space to flourish. Like that's I guess why it eventually goes to the Brooklyn waterfront for a time period before that gets kind of redeveloped into everything going away. But you need those spaces for this stuff to kind of expand.
Yeah, yeah, I think about that a lot. I remember for a while like feeling like, well, maybe Detroit's next.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like genuinely, like where
Yeah.
can anyone young go and afford to live?
Yeah. Like and it also feels like a lot of it happens now, like you're saying with our kids, like it happens a lot of it online. And there's a lot of people that have come on the show that are, kind of coming up in the last 10 years that almost kind of talk about a decentralized scene where they're just meeting people. It's obviously very different, but like they're meeting people online and collaborating that way just because there isn't necessarily the spaces for them to meet up like there used to be.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Like my daughter's into anime, my
Mm-hmm.
youngest. So she goes online and finds all these little communities of people who are into what she's into. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Has
And you,
has anything come out of that musically so far?
there's this I had this guy on a couple, I guess 2 years ago, that's part of this goth boy clique, which
Hmm.
is sort of like emo trap music, and it's like emo drive music combined with hip hop. So
Hmm.
it's but it's something completely new. And once again, like all these people, he was part of like a much more conventional punk hardcore scene, but met people in California that were kind of doing the same sort of thing, and met people in Virginia that were kind of doing the same sort of thing, and all of them kind of ended up building like a completely virtual scene out of it. And it's amazing to kind of watch it flourish. Like, I might not understand it because it's not necessarily what I came up with, but at the same time it is people taking the tools at their hands and building something new with it.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I find that so inspiring, especially like the stuff that, you're involved with back then too. It's like a bunch of kids that a lot of times had nothing too and are building something out of nothing.
Yeah, and totally doing it for themselves, like not to get rich, not to get famous, none of that. Just the authenticity of it all, I think, is what drew me in. So,
I think maybe that's the thing that's changed, is that maybe the possibility of fame is always present now because it can
why does
happen.
everyone want to be famous?
Because I don't know, I guess because it seems fun outside.
Seems fun.
Yeah, it
Okay.
seems fun because you only get, because now especially you get this hyper curated version of it through Instagram of what it's like to be a famous person, where you're like, oh, this is amazing, like
Oh,
all I'm
right.
seeing is the best parts of their lives.
Right. I see. Yeah.
i,
Yeah.
I have that
I
too.
guess it's like being rich. Like I imagine being rich. Like sounds great to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no problems, like once
Yeah.
it comes
Look
it's
at
like
that.
smooth sailing.
Willing to try.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the thing was also with fame is that it became tangible. Like it was like, the idea of like at one point, like, the struggle to get into film. Like I can't imagine the struggle to get into film, but now you could just do something really stupid and take a photograph of yourself and it can go viral and you could become famous to
Yeah.
a segment of the population that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's how Justin Bieber started, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Or Jackass, like
Yeah.
you don't even have to worry about singing. Like if you can take enough pain, there'll be someone that's going to watch your video and you can
Yeah.
probably find a way to
Yeah.
live.
Don't try this at home, folks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
But once again, all those Jackass guys come into punk rock too, so they were just doing something, I guess, with the tools at their disposal as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's Steve-O was a big fan of Gorilla Biscuits and the
Oh,
Cro-Mags
okay.
as
All
well.
right.
So, um, I read an interview with you where you talked about coming out of New York hardcore and getting into films, like you almost like a transition period. So that what period does that happen in? Like 91, 90?
Yeah, I mean, it was even a little earlier, I think, because I'm so bad with years. It's ridiculous. You'd think I would know the year I graduated high school. I think it was 86. And, some things happened in my life then, like my brother died.
I'm so
So
sorry.
that was kind of a big, it was a surfing accident, it was just a freak kind of thing. But that very radically obviously changed my life. So I think between that and you're 18, you're 19, you're like, oh, I got to figure out what the hell I'm doing with my life. So I just kind of segued more into music. Although I did go to into acting. Sorry. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts for a year, and I remember them being like, trying to homogenize how I looked because I was a fat, punk rocker, and they were like, yeah, you're not going to work a lot. So, which is true, but still,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I would say sort of end of the '80s, beginning of the '90s is when I kind of went to
Was
act.
because obviously New York goes through an amazing transition period around like the end of the 80s into the 90s where people talk about it here, like the music changes, a lot of people talk about violence coming in, there's ABC No Rio opens up. Could you see that stuff beginning to happen already at that point, or is
That's
it
so
still?
interesting. So they said what violence came in? Which violence?
CBGB's eventually stops doing the matinee shows because they said there's too
Mhm.
many fights, and ABC
Mhm.
No Rio opens up, which is like
Mhm.
that DIY space, and
Oh
it's
yeah, no, I remember. I
yeah,
went to a lot of shows there. Yeah.
and it's always said that it opens up in response to kind of violence that was happening in the scene at the time, and a lot more fights were beginning to happen around then, and that this was like a separate scene that almost it stands in opposition in a way to the older scene. And it's funny because people that weren't part of the CBGBs or weren't part of the ABC No Rio scene that have come on the show have talked about having resentment towards it and feeling like they were never they didn't belong there or that it wasn't their scene at all as well. So it feels like it goes almost both ways, that there's a divide that kind of comes in to New York hardcore around 91, 90.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was moving out of it then by then
Mm.
because I knew people who worked at ABC No Rio, and I don't really remember that. If anything, I remember, more violence when I was younger, earlier, but that was like gang stuff in the neighborhood, literally,
Yeah.
kind of crossing over with us in the park there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there were always people who would just show up at matinees and, slam dance, and they didn't know what it was or, so yeah, I guess maybe that stuff did get worse, huh?
From what I hear, once again, I'm like looking at it from a distance and stuff like that, and
Mhm.
just trying to put. That's why I love doing this show, is because I feel like every time I'm in a class and I'm just trying to put more and more pieces together of this giant punk rock puzzle that's kind of
Yeah, it's
happening
like you're an
around then.
investigator. Yeah,
I really feel
exactly.
like if I could have applied myself to anything else, I could have maybe cured a disease or done something really important for this world because I really do spend a lot of time studying this stuff for some reason.
You do what you love.
Yeah, and I think it's so fascinating too that it's like, once again, I'm ultimately obsessed by the music that was made by teenagers, but at the same time, like it is music that changed the world. And like you're saying, there's no aspirations of commercial fame. There's no aspirations of this leading to anything. And people are doing it because they feel like it's a necessity for them to do it, to express themselves and to get this out there. And yeah, I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about it a lot too because my 18-year-old has been stuck in the house for the past year and a half, and physically, like I can see this like angst and this like,
Mm.
she's got to get it out,
Hmm.
like I don't know how she's going to she doesn't. I don't know how she is going to do that. But I mean, just going to a matinee, you could just kind of exhaust yourself, just get it all out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. No, I went last weekend. I went to New York and I saw Negative Approach play.
Oh, right
And,
on.
and just like, it was a very small show with 20 people there, everyone's distanced and stuff like that. But even just, I wasn't even moshing, but just even moving around again, just feeling that kind of release happen. And obviously, it won't be the same for my kids because they don't necessarily like that kind of music, but there has to be something that kind of lets you get rid of that, I don't know, tension, like that, yeah,
Yeah.
existential dread, like whatever
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's funny, a few years back, I don't know how many years again, I'm terrible with years. Um, I went to Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds.
Mm.
I've loved him for many years, and I brought my daughter. And there was a moment when we could like push through and get to the front, and I was like, "Come on, let's go, let's go!" And we're like, I'm thinking she was probably maybe 13. And and then once we got up front, it got a little iffy in moments, and I just thought, oh shit, this is my kid.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
what?
My
But
baby.
she held her own. She did fine. And then I don't know what is making me think of this. And then like I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I took my husband to see AF at the Roxy. And Roger and Vinny were like, come backstage. So I was like, okay. And I just felt like a little old lady, like walking through the pit, excuse me, with my big old purse, and they looked at me like, wait, what are you doing here? And,
But
anyway.
but that's the thing about this music, is that it is almost that Neverland thing where you can have young people still losing it to Agnostic Front, because
Yeah.
I don't know, it's
Yeah.
still, it doesn't age in the same way as other stuff does.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's true. It's funny. And then recently my daughter said to me that she was at a party and she said, this girl saw my shirt because she has my old Bad Brains shirt. Thank you very much.
Oh my
And
God.
and she said, and the girl was like, my dad was best friends with HR. And I was like, no, he wasn't. Okay, take it easy. So funny.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, unless you were there and actually saw it, you just have to go with the legend. And it wasn't as documented as other scenes. That's why I think the photographs that
Yeah.
you have and the oral history is so important because if we just go by the printed record, bands like Ultraviolence would be lost to the sands of time because they were on just a couple comps.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I'm glad you know who they are.
Oh yeah, no, I think they might be on the New York Montreal connection comp, which brings it fully to Canada where I'm at right now. So
Right. And wait, you're in Toronto?
I'm in Toronto, yeah. But I feel like a national connection to any punk scene within this region, I guess.
Right, I got it. Now, I always try to remember what the name of the place was because I drove the Cro-Mags up to Montreal for their first gig ever out of America.
What?
And I just know Voivod was on the ticket. It was like Voivod and the Cro-Mags, and when we hit the border, man, they took my entire car apart. They separated us into different rooms, and they took the seats out of my car. Like I didn't even know that was possible, and we almost missed the gig. Was it what was the name of that club? I almost have it.
I think I've even seen a flyer for it too, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, I don't know. That was such a wild trip. I'm actually seeing Harley tonight for the first time since I don't know, like what is it, 30 years or something?
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's gonna be wild.
So you drive Cro-Mags around for more than one show, or is it just that one
Oh
show?
yeah, yeah. I had a big old station wagon, so it's not like I mean, did they use me? Did I drive them around? There was a little bit of I remember a standoff at the toll booth on the way back from that Canada show where I was like, God damn it, I'm not paying the toll. And we like had to sit there for a few minutes while everyone dug in and found some change, like, come on guys, Jesus.
But you know that you need the people that are actually doing the logistical work to make this thing
Exactly.
function.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
know, absolutely. Anyone that's been in a band knows that without the roadies, it would just be a practice somewhere.
That's for damn sure.
That's
Yes.
awesome. You got to write a book. Like I
I know,
hope it's not just
right?
photos. I hope you got essays in there about all this stuff.
Oh God. See, and that's the thing. I'm like, I think I'm toying with the whole. I don't want a lot of words in the book. That's the thing. I don't want a lot of words. I like the photos to just, like I'm the one who had. I don't know if this is like common knowledge, but there's a section in my book about the pool party that I had at my house. Uh, sorry, my phone is making noise.
No, do not worry.
That Nausea, Warzone, everybody played at my pool party, and actually Roger got arrested in my hometown. And
On
when
that day?
Yes, he never even made it to the gig because he pulled into my hometown in the van, a bunch of skinheads, and they just pulled him right over and searched the car and bye Roger.
Man, so Agnostic Front didn't get to play that show.
No, they did not.
What
No.
a show, though. Warzone and Nausea at a pool party with
Yeah, it's
Agnostic
not
Front
wild.
pitch? That's amazing.
So I have photos of that in the book, and yeah, just whatever. I just had my camera with me. Now everybody has a camera with them all the
Yeah.
time, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what's changed a lot, right? Like, that's why these things are so invaluable is because not everyone had a camera. And once you took the picture, as I know, that's half the battle. The other half is taking it to get developed. I've got so many undeveloped rolls of film.
Oh, you should look at them. Maybe you have like some real gems in there. No?
Yeah, by the time I got into interesting stuff like music, I put down the camera completely. I did not have the wherewithal to take photographs, so it would just be like photos of my family pets from when I was younger. So
Right.
nothing too pressing for the world of pop culture, I'm afraid. But it's amazing that like yeah, like that's, people had the wherewithal to do it. People had the wherewithal to be like, I'm going to document it. And once again, you're not documenting it because there's any hope of getting like 500 likes for that picture on Instagram or whatever the metric is. You're documenting it because you want to hold on to that memory personally because there's no other value to it at the time.
Totally. 100%. And I still feel that way. Like, when I'm at shows or whatever, I do want to shoot. So I guess I like it.
So when you started making movies, were you still able to kind of go to concerts? Like what kind of music were you into as you started making film and TV stuff, getting more into acting?
Oh God, I change all the time. I was going to ask you what you listen to now, because I listen to
Ultraviolence and Agnostic Front.
really
But
like nothing else. There's no.
I'm surrounded by records, but I'd be lying if I pretended for 1 second it wasn't, punk from all over the world. But and I like rap music as well, but I definitely am a student of this game.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw Kendrick Lamar a few years back,
Hmm.
and I'm not someone who enjoys ginormous, Coliseum type shows, but I found it a kind of a punk rock vibe, I must say. Once he got on stage, there was something going on there that was very interesting and alive and authentic. So I don't know. Yeah, I listen to all different kinds of music.
Absolutely. There's this band HO9909 from New Jersey. They're
Okay.
like a rap group, but they got into they were into hip hop and rap music growing up in New Jersey in the neighborhood they grew up in, but then started going to shows at on the Brooklyn waterfront when they were kind of like still having concerts there and like the Cake Shop and all these like sort of random little pop-up venues, and they saw the Cro-Mags play a House of Vans show, and it blew their mind, and they just started incorporating Cro-Mags and Bad Brains and all these sorts of things into what they were doing musically and kind of created their own thing completely. And it's completely a punk vibe when you go and see them live. Like
Oh, that's
the
so cool.
moshing, it's really, yeah, it's nice to know that it continues, that it finds a way to kind of like pass this energy on to the next generation so they can kind of take it and do what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I just thought of like 20 things while you were saying that, and they all just went right out of my head.
No, I know that feeling.
There you
That's
go. Oh,
fine.
I know. I was thinking about how DC back in the day, there was this go-go music.
Hmm.
Do you know that music?
Trouble Funk and I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
some of the other groups, but yeah, no,
I feel
absolutely.
like it was HR who was listening to it because where else would I have heard it from, you know?
Mhm.
Like, and they used to listen, I remember, to like Billy Cobham. I don't know, these names are just coming back to me like weird. Oh, and Mackie, that drummer,
Absolutely.
he used to listen to Billy Cobham a lot.
He was in Fun Loving Criminals after for Cro-Mags.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I I missed all that. I'll take your word for it.
Well, Fun Loving Criminals had that hit song riding around robbing banks all whacked out on Scooby Snacks. It was like an MTV
Right.
Buzzbin clip video later on too. But it's and actually Mackey's fascinating because he was one of the people that kind of integrated graffiti and hip hop into the hardcore scene really early on with Frontline, like his one of his first bands, and
Yeah.
a big graffiti writer. So yeah, once again, a very fascinating character. All these people you're bringing up, like I'm just
You got to get him on the show. Get him on the show.
my friends played in the John Mags with him for a long time, and I got him
Mhm.
to ask him, and he has no interest. I don't think he likes the term punk rock, so I think that was his.
That is hilarious. Well, it is a little overused these days, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately, it is. But that's what's amazing about it. Everyone defines it as something completely different. For one
Yeah.
person, it's one thing, and for other people, it's Gigi Allen and something
Yeah.
like
Oh
that.
God. Yeah.
Was he? He was in New York, kind of around then,
He
right?
sure was. Yeah. And I remember going to some show somewhere and standing way in the back. You know, I was like, okay, I kind of want to see what's going on here, but I don't want to be a part of it. So
Yeah.
I don't really remember much. So there.
Everyone who's been on the show that saw him live is always like, "Yeah, I was staying way at the back." No one's been like, "I was up front for that
Oh,
whole thing."
really?
Yeah, no one.
Yeah.
Even
If they were, they're not going to even bring it up. Okay.
no, no. Poor Jay Mascis and Thurston Moore, I think, no showed the show, but Jay Mascis actually had to play with Gigi Allen. He was like, "I was trying to stay as far away from him during the set. I had no idea what it was till we're in the middle of the show." And then he's like, "I'm playing guitar, but I'm trying to get to the back of the room on the stage
Oh
for
my
the
God.
whole experience."
Yeah.
Oh, I read that Jeff Buckley was your roommate. Is that true?
It is true. And it's funny because I thought of him earlier and I was thinking how much he wanted to see the Bad Brains live, or Bad
Wow.
Brains. I shouldn't say the. Um, and he actually at one point flew to some show, like when he had a little bit of money, he flew to some show in Chicago. I think it was Chicago. And he was like so excited he was finally going to see him, and NHR got arrested. I think he hit someone with a mic or something the night before. I don't know what happened, but he never got to see him, which is very sad to me
Oh, that's
because
sad. That's
yeah,
terribly sad. Like,
yeah.
was that in New York that you?
That he was my roommate. Yeah, I
Yeah.
met him in LA. I had come to LA. This is again crossover. Like I had already done Silence of the Lambs. I was staying in the Magic Hotel which is next door to the one where Janis Joplin died. Like kind of these two sketchy motels in Hollywood.
Mhm.
And he was the concierge. He was the front desk guy. And he had like long black hair, and and he kept talking about New York, New York, New York. I just want to go to New York, and we became friends. And then I was like, dude, I have a sort of bedroom, an extra bedroom, if you want to come and like live with me. So he did.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's also amazing that he was into the Bad Brains. I never
Yeah,
heard of
well,
that.
I mean, anyone who hears them should be.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. They are definitely like almost an evangelical band. I find it also interesting when you talk to those guys about, talking about DC earlier, the difference in their philosophy versus someone like Ian MacKaye, where Bad Brains were like, we had to go out and spread our message to everyone in the world, where Ian MacKaye was very much focused on building the scene where he
Right.
was, and then ultimately expands around the world through that. But it's just amazing these two completely different philosophies and
Yeah.
approaches to kind of like a punk rock, but they're both coming from the exact same kind of place and time.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought of that. That is interesting.
Did you get to travel to many other scenes back then?
Um,
Like other than Montreal, of course.
well, DC, I went to a couple of shows down there at the 9:30 Club. Look at that.
Yes.
I just remembered that. The cobwebs are clearing. Where else did I go? I remember at some point being in LA and, having friends in New York say, "Oh, go see my friends in it wasn't LA, it was San Francisco, but I don't remember seeing any shows, so I guess the answer's no. Not really. Maybe Boston. I think I saw a couple of gigs in Boston.
It feels like New York's just so different in how it was taken up. Were you able to perceive that when you're going to these other places, like comparing it to what the scene you're kind of coming out of in New York at that time?
Yeah, but I was like New York proud, so we were the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you poor scene.
Well, it's a
Yeah.
reason it's almost become like a separate brand of itself in
Mm.
hardcore. Like NYHC is like it's almost like a trademark name at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and it's weird because I kind of feel ownership to that one more than I do CB's now because of the whole store at the airport
At the
thing.
airport. Yep. Yeah.
You
I,
know.
I wanted to go eat there one time, but I didn't have enough time to make the flight. But I was also like, is this like the ultimate sellout move to eat at the CBGB's restaurant in New York?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
It's but once again, like, not to keep harping on this thing, but it's amazing where these things go, where even this club that just hosted these shows is now so storied that people are willing to look past the famous urine smell and dog shit smell that it had and put a
Mhm.
restaurant with its name on top of it.
I know exactly. It just makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah,
Like when you think of CB's bathroom, what would you want? A sandwich? Sure, why not?
no one has been on this show and talked about the amazing smell that venue had. It's
Yeah.
definitely the thing that
Yeah.
always is brought up is how bad it smelled. In the early days, especially because Healy had his dog there still pooping around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just remember sweat and heat.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that kind of sensory, like, just being exhausted. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has been a thrill of a lifetime. And anytime, Brooke, you want to come back here and get punished more about this New York hardcore stuff, when your book comes out, will you please come back here?
Oh yes, please. And I really got to finish it. I promise I will. It's the same guys who put out Drew Carolyn's book Matinee.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and that somewhere below 14th and East or whatever. Yeah, so I just got to finish the damn thing. I
It's
got to finish.
Radio Raheem Records
Yes,
with Fat
yes,
Rich and Chris Minicucci.
yeah, those guys.
Yep, two buddies of mine used to stay
Oh,
on Fat
good.
Rich's floor in Philadelphia and then New York, and Chris I've stayed with many times, and yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
love
no.
them.
As soon as I talked to those guys, I knew they were the ones. Like there was like a sort of fancy place asking me, and I was like, no.
No,
So
those guys get it like in a way that they see the weight, the cultural weight of this stuff, and I think what they're doing with their label. I haven't talked to them in years about it, but I think what they're doing with their label is really kind of serving this stuff and kind of giving it its proper place in history. And my God, the photos I've seen from your archive are ridiculous. I can't wait to see the rest. This pool party alone,
I
holy
know,
shit!
right? Hilarious. All right. Well, I'll definitely come back, and I'll definitely make sure you get a copy of the book somehow. So.
Thank you, Brooke, for coming on the show, and I'm going to hold you to that. Brooke will be back when this incredible book comes out, and that will be out on Radio Raheem Records, or books, I guess, hopefully at some point in the near future, because, fantastic job. And check out all the stuff that Radio Raheem does. They put out some awesome books. Drew Carolyn, who was on the show way back when his book came out, and they've done a really cool book recently of Midwest sort of ephemera from the hardcore scene. So, yeah, check out all that stuff. And, cannot wait for Brooke to come back. How mind-blowing is that? That's why we do this podcast. And if you're looking for Brooke, you can find her on Instagram at The Real Brooke Smith. And you can find her on Twitter at @Iam_Brooke Smith. And again, you've seen her in many, many different things, but Grey's Anatomy, Ray Donovan, Bates Motel, most recently Big Sky and Them, an incredible actor, and what an amazing documentarian of hardcore. All right, so that is it for this week's episode. Coming up next, another incredible guest, Nancy Burrell, will be here. She has written a fantastic book, Not Holding Your Coat, and I strongly recommend picking up this book and reading it. It is an amazing account, and my gosh, this is a really fun guest. We go deep about the differences between scenes and just all the kind of, minutia that we love here on this podcast. I'm excited for you to hear this one, and that is coming up in a few short days. And I got to get to work. All right. Well, that is it. Remember, as always, Black Lives Matter. The lives of Indigenous people matter. We need to protect trans kids, and we need to help trans people protect themselves. And we need to stop hate and violence towards Asian people and people of different faiths and just knock all this shit out. As we say, these aren't political issues. These are just human rights issues. People deserve to be free and live their lives without, dealing with bullshit. So, destroy fascism, and then we can talk about, politics, like, funding the post office better and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely. Sign your organ donor cards, because by the time they come looking for your organs, you don't need them. Just give them to someone else, just literally dead weight in your body that you're lugging around at that point. Do something creative for yourself. Make a zine, start a podcast, take some photographs. Take photographs of your friends, because look at Brooke. Brooke's an actor. She's done all this incredible stuff, on screen and TV and stuff, but also look at these photos that she was just taking for herself back then, end up becoming huge historical, important documents to people like me, at least. But, so go take some photos, draw a picture. Who knows? It might be important. But if nothing else, it will help you mentally, I think. It does for me, at least, doing something creative. Speaking of helping mentally, try meditating. It works. It's I didn't believe in it. Maybe it'll work for you too. Who knows? Get your vax. Just might as well do it, because we want to start going to shows again. Wear a mask. Be safe. Be smart. Take care of your friends. And that's it. I guess I want to see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening, and have a good week. Or a couple days. I'm going to be talking to you in a couple days. Not a week. I might not even go to bed now. I might just start working on the next podcast. Who am I kidding? I love it. All right. Thank you for listening.